This is the Church of St. Paul in the Desert.
In the name of God, Amen. Please be seated. We have some absolutely fabulous lessons this morning. We have an Old Testament lesson and a gospel lesson that talk about the healing of leprosy. Now, what we know today as Hansen's disease was an overarching term, leprosy, that covered many skin diseases. Can the choir hear me? I got told last time they couldn't, so I didn't want to get in trouble. But,
The vote's still out on that one.
all right, thank you. All right, that's good. But with that said, we begin with the story of Naaman. Now, Naaman was an important general and powerful and rather arrogant if you listen to that story carefully. And yes, he suffered from leprosy. And when the slave girl who had been captured and was in the service of his wife told him about Elisha and being healed, he decided, well, give it a chance, give it a try, see what happens. So what he was told was something rather simple. Go wash in the Jordan 7 times. Not a difficult task, just go do it. While being the self-important, somewhat arrogant person that he was, he decided that that wasn't tough enough. There were no incantations or formularies or strange positions to go into in order to be healed. And so he became outraged and enraged and said, well, there are other rivers, and why can't we use those, and on and on. Somewhat a typical arrogant response to a rather simple request. And yet, in going to the river and doing as instructed, he is healed, and he acknowledges the one true God, the God of Israel, and the power and the grace that is bestowed upon him through that experience. In the healing in the gospel stories, we're not sure what the other 9 folk were who were healed, but yet again, the author of Luke's gospel offers us the one who is marginalized, the Samaritan, who is not only healed but returns to God, returns to Jesus, and is given full healing, is renewed to full life, to wholeness of life. And that, once again, is Luke reminding us that those of us who feel at times on the fringes of society are the ones whom Jesus continually comes to and invites fully into the community of faith. But in the middle of those 2 lessons is the passage from 2 Timothy, which is undoubtedly one of my favorite for lots of reasons, none the least of which was some 30-odd years ago, as I was a new student at Virginia Seminary, the Kennedy Center in Washington was being dedicated. And Leonard Bernstein had been commissioned to prepare a piece for that dedication. And the piece he prepared was the Mass. Some of you may remember that piece. It's a fabulous theater piece. But in the midst of that is this passage as the centerpiece for the epistle reading. And it was kind of post-Vietnam and conscientious objectors and all of that. But you cannot lock up the word of the Lord was the piece that stayed with me in my memory as central to that entire orchestrated piece. And that is what Paul says, or the author of 2 Peter in this passage, Timothy says, in this passage, that is so critical and so important to us. Remember Jesus Christ, raised from the dead. Remember Jesus Christ, raised from the dead. Central, pivotal, the very center of who we are as a Christian community, that which gathers us Sunday after Sunday. Remember Jesus Christ and him raised from the dead. It is so critical. It is so much the very center of our proclamation of good news. That in and of itself, remembering, the act of remembering. We come to this table, the words, the prayer of consecration, anamnesis, remembering. Remember who God is. Remember what God has done. Remember who you are. Remember. And how easy it is for us to forget. We live in difficult times. We've lived in difficult times no matter what century or what time. Every community of faith has faced into difficult times. And so we do also. And yet the act of remembering brings to consciousness the mighty acts of God, the grace and love bestowed, the memory that the central act of love was Jesus' sacrifice on the cross on our behalf. Remembering that love is the fundamental and centerpiece of this faith we proclaim. Remembering, and yet how easy it is to forget. This past week, the Supreme Court reconvened in Washington. And one of the first cases that they have chosen to take up is a case where a group from a church in Kansas has decided that their MO is to protest at every military funeral, saying that the death of that soldier is a sign of God's judgment because the United States accepts or condones homosexuality. It is such a there's such a disconnect for me that it is beyond my ability to fathom. That this group somehow feels that that kind of vicious and vitriolic hate is a part of the gospel that we proclaim. It just doesn't make any sense to me. I have to say thank you to Father Andrew for his comments concerning bullying and the death of Tyler Clementi.